Hello, I'm Dr. Conor Bell and I teach bassoon at West Texas A&M University. This video is to help you prepare for the 2023-2024 Texas All-State Competition. This video is for number 22 out of your Weissenborn book, one of the technical etudes. This is actually one of my favorites in the whole book and was an all-state etude here in Texas back in the dark ages when I was in high school. So it has a special fondness to me. While you're working on this etude, it can be tricky. One of the things you should be looking for is, can you keep a consistent, light staccato articulation all the way through it? Even when you've been tonguing for a really long time and you're starting to get tired. Make sure that it's always a very light staccato. The tongue is just lightly touching the bottom reed of the reed. It doesn't take a lot of pressure with your tongue to stop the reed from vibrating. And your tendency, the longer you play it, and this is everyone's tendency, is for that tongue to get heavier and heavier and slower the longer you go. So practice keeping it light. And take breaks. You should not be trying to play this whole etude in one sitting. You should break it into chunks, which thanks to the fermatas and the breaks and the changes of the dynamic, it's pretty easy to find good chunks. And repeat those chunks several times in a row. If you're just going from the beginning to the end every time on this one, you're going to have some glaring holes in your preparation. For instance, we know that the middle of this, where there's a lot more chord changes, and then that very ending are going to be the trickiest parts. So make sure you start your work there and really focus with intention. On that note, when you're choosing your tempo, especially important when you're in the room and you're actually taking the audition, make sure you're thinking about whatever part in the music is hardest for you. It might be, the second line from the end when we get all of those high notes and the broken arpeggios instead of the regular arpeggios. That might be the hardest part for you. So get your tempo idea from that, because if you're just thinking about tempo at the beginning, you're probably going to start too fast. By the time you've worked on this for a while, you can play measure one at any tempo. So make sure you choose a tempo from the beginning that you can stick with throughout the whole etude. That being said, in the slurred passages, I don't take a slower tempo, but I think of it as kind of being on the back foot. It's a little more relaxed and less driving as we enjoy those longer pitches. When we have the ties, make sure you keep subdividing. It's very easy to distort the rhythm. They should still be triplets. In fact, I would spend a lot of time practicing it like this. That's under tempo, but articulating all of the eighth notes in those longer notes so that you stay in time and don't turn the moving eighth notes into 16th notes, which is very easy to do. So practice articulating out all the eighth notes in those passages. Also, especially for in the middle of this, where we have a lot of chord changes and they're moving a little bit faster, I would spend a lot of time just practicing the downbeat note of each beat so that you have something to latch onto. No matter what happens on the other two notes on that beat, you're always on the right downbeat note. And so if something happens, which something will always happen, you have something to hold on to and hopefully keep going and recover with something resembling grace. So for instance, this is starting in the piano halfway through that section. I might just go sometimes. Like so. And that way, when I start adding in those other pitches, I'm always thinking of my phrase direction. So even when we're just out of soft dynamic, there should always be an ebb and flow of your dynamic. And taking out the extraneous pitches is a good way to figure out where that phrase direction should be. One other important point in this one, if you find the second line from the end and the second measure of that line, this is generally the hardest part for a lot of people, just because it's different than all the other stuff you've been doing. I find it's helpful sometimes to just say out loud something really obvious. Like, in that measure, while you're doing the broken arpeggios, all of the lower notes are A's. Say it to yourself. And then, what that does is it allows you to just focus on the other pitches, because you know that all of the lower pitches are A's. So just play A's and hit the other pitches. And that will reduce the amount of information that you're trying to keep up with. Just like in earlier passages, you might be focusing on the downbeat notes, even when you're playing the other notes. That reduction of things that you have to think about will let you spend more of your brain power on the things that actually matter, like playing with a beautiful sound and having good phrasing. That's about it with this one. Make sure that your dynamics are nice and dramatic, your staccatos stay clean and crisp.